we'll do the introductions. So let's start with the introductions. Maybe you should tell us who you are, names and positions, because we have a large team from the company here. Please go ahead.
Okay. I'm Pablo. I'm from Marketing Department. And I started at Soprano 3 years ago.
Okay.
I am Daniel. I'm from engineer. I have about 1 year from company and here in my side.
Hello, Mr. Mario. Nice to meet you.
Very nice. Well, very nice to meet you all. So we have a company introduction webinar today, and I'm very excited. Soprano is participating in X-Culture for the first time. So most of the companies or several companies this semester have participated in the past, and some actually participated multiple times. They just keep coming back. But Soprano is here for the first time, and honestly,
yes, it's our first time
too. I know what you do. I've seen the description, but I still have very limited information about the company. So I suggest what we do is let's start with a quick introduction. So you tell us a little bit about the company, the products, the history, and then students, if you have questions, and I see we have quite a few students watching now. If you have questions, just type them either in the Q&A window, or if you want to talk to us, raise your hand. There is a button that literally looks like raised hand, and engage in the discussion. We will add you to this virtual room and you will be able to talk to us. And I'm also getting some questions from students who have classes now, could not be here live, but they send the questions via email. So I prepared those as well. And yeah, so we will go into kind of question answer mode after the initial introduction.
Okay. Let's talk about Soprano. Soprano has about 6 years. And we work at one division of the company. It's the name of thermal units. So we work with thermal bottles, other products.
Thermal dishes,
bottles, thermal bags, thermal boxes, and all about this kind of products, you know. And the other units work about
Civil construction,
nutritional,
harder products. Then I think he used the expression in this unity we have more contact with the consumer, different than another units. Then is a little different for us because we need to have a strategy for develop the products and the market with this communication with our consumers.
Okay. And so can you explain a little bit more? So you actually make the products, right? You have the manufacturing facilities. You don't only sell them, you actually produce those hardware and locks and the thermal ware, right?
We have two kinds of business. We import the items and we develop items. For example, here in our unit, we work at a thermal box that we produce here. And we import some components like the ampoules from the bottles.
Mm-hmm. And so in these thermal bottles, what goes into it? Because I know your company also makes some metal hardware. So that is relatively clear. You basically bend the metal or mold the metal into the right shapes, and you assemble.
The metal products. Yeah, the metal products we develop in another unit. It's like the example of the name for us is SFF. It's another unit. They produce like locks and padlocks,
hardware, doors and windows.
Is it all made in one factory, or you have multiple facilities, production facilities?
No, it's like another factory.
It's totally separated.
Yeah.
And all of that production is in
our own factory.
All of that production is in Brazil, or you have multiple countries?
No, all in Brazil. We have a kind of
office in China.
We have an office in China, but all the units that products are here in Brazil.
I have a question about the age of the company. How old is Soprano? And maybe a little bit about the history of the company.
65 years old, Soprano.
Oh, that's actually quite old. And so which of the products was the first one? What did the company start with?
We begin, the factory begin with musical instruments like
Accordion.
no, accordion. I don't know the name.
Accordion? Like a musical
Accordion,
instrument?
yes. We begin
Okay.
doing accordion, and a few years we begin to make locks and other things like that. Our unit, the thermalware unit, we
Started 20 years old.
20 years old, about 20 years old.
That's a lot of pivoting. So if you start with musical instruments, then you pivot into locks, then thermal units. That's, you know, I guess that's life, right?
Yeah.
Whatever works, whatever works. In terms of the customer base, we have a lot of questions. So do you sell your products primarily in Brazil? Do you sell to other countries?
We sell our products principally in Brazil and other countries in Latin America, like Chile, Paraguay, Argentina, Peru.
Is it primarily because they are close geographically, or different trade agreements, or some other reasons?
It's easier to do the commercial business.
Right. And I think there are several trade kind of area agreements within Latin America, right? So in terms of like free trade zone or something like that, right?
Yes, we have a trade sector here in the company, but we have a person here in the unit that works with exportation.
Mm-hmm.
What percent of our sales is in Brazil?
Mm-hmm. Now, you already saw the question, so we have a question from Stanislav Gapa about sustainability of your products. And I see Pablo published or said there that all the bottles are BPA free. Can you explain what that is?
BPA free, it's like a denomination here in Brazil that a plastic that don't have bisphenol in the composition.
Yeah. One of the companies we worked with last year specializes in plastic recycling. And so because they're right here in North Carolina, we had a couple of tours of their factories. So several of the students came there with me. And so that BPA thing was a very important thing. So apparently some plastics are more environmentally friendly than others. And so for them, that was a big topic. And I don't understand all the chemistry behind it, but apparently there are good plastics and bad plastics, and then some pollutants and stuff. So yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, makes perfect sense.
All products is all products is BPA free.
Yeah, all products from Soprano are BPA free. And another factor that's kind of interesting is that our thermal box are from industrialized plastics. You know?
Yeah, makes sense. A lot of questions about competition. So I assume there are many companies that make similar products globally. Who are your main competitors, and who is making your life sort of difficult?
Our first competitor in Brazil, it's MOR, M-O-R, you know? This company in Brazil is so strong that that complicates the market for us. And another company in Brazil that has a great capability of the developing products is Thermolar, and another Invicta.
How about the Chinese competition? I mean, everybody worries about China in general, but when it comes to manufacturing particularly, and I assume hardware, thermal bottles, I mean, I think from my knowledge, China is, you know, the country that makes those things a lot. So is that creating any problems for you?
No, in this market, because like an example for bottles in Brazil, the public that buys bottles knows a lot about the brand, like Thermolar. They trust a lot of in the brand Thermolar, and they buy only like Thermolar, for an example. And another thing for thermal boxes in Brazil, the most famous is Soprano.
Uh-huh.
They trust in the the brand Soprano.
Interesting. Actually, it's surprising. I mean, I wish we had more of your products in the United States. Again, I have nothing against China, but it seems like if you go, shopping in the United States, everything is made in China, especially if it's sort of consumer products like, like bottles or locks or stuff like that. So it would be nice to see some competition from different countries. We have a few more questions about competition. So what does make your products more competitive? And then there are a few more questions about profitability. We'll talk about that separately. But if you had to compare your products to the competition, what would be the sort of weak sides and strong sides of your products?
The strongness of our products is like, for an example, the structure of the product is more robust, and the colors are different. For example, our competitors use the internal parts in white plastic, and we use only gray plastic. Do not como é que você estragar?
Damage.
Do not damage easily like the other colors. For example, we have differentials in our product, like in the lid of the product, we have over lid. I don't know how to say that. Over
Yeah.
It's we can open easily and access the internal part of the thermal boxes. It's a difference in our product that the concurrents don't have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so a related question is from Warren Johnson, same question. So if you had to say what your competitive advantage is, like what keeps you afloat? So is it only the quality and difference in design, or are there any other things that make you more competitive?
Principally in design, quality and design.
How about pricing? How do your prices compare to the competitors' products? Our
price is a little bit this market in Brazil is very aggressive. For example, we have a lower price, and our competitors lower their price more. So we fight for the prices of the products. It's a little bit difficult in this part of the market.
And I think the difference Soprano than the competition is our strategy. We are not specialized in
just one product.
This one product. Like Thermolar is specialized in thermal bottles. More is specialized in ice box. Soprano, we are not specialized. We are
generalistic.
Right.
Then we work with bottles,
thermal boxes,
thermal dishes. Then when we go in the market, we can offer for our customers more products. Then I think is a good service for our customers.
In this year, in the beginning of this year, we develop another line that complements the other lines we already have, like a bathroom line, is sink line, garbage.
Yeah. Now, one of the students is asking here again, Stanislav, do you have any samples of your products that you can show us now? Like, do you have anything in your office?
1 minute, please.
Since you have a physical product, we want to see it. Most of the companies that participate in Xculture would be more like service companies, and they don't really have anything to show. So they deliver the service, but I mean, there is nothing physical that you can see.
This is one example of our product. This is a bottle. The name is Crystal. It has 1 liter, and it's made from PP.
So what's the technology that allows it to keep the temperature of the drink inside? Is it like multiple layers of?
No, we had a vacuum flask here inside. The ampoule is the secret of the thermal bottle. A good quality of ampoule made the product okay to use.
So how many of those do you sell a year? I mean, are we talking about what, thousands, millions? Like
Per month, around 100 pieces per month.
per month? Ah, so
100 pieces about.
Only this model.
okay, okay. In terms of the size of the company, then, so what is your number of employees and revenue, or some other, measures? Like, how big is the company?
Today we have about 1,000 employees.
About 1,000 employees.
1,000.
And then in terms of the revenue, are you allowed to disclose the figures? Like, are we talking about revenues in what, hundreds of thousands, millions, tens of millions?
I don't understand your question, please.
In terms of the total revenue, like when you sell the products per year, so what is your total sort of, how much money do you get for your products, like the combined revenue?
About 500,000. 500 million
Reais.
of reais.
Around.
And that's all only thermal wear, or it's all of the products?
About 100 million of dollar.
Okay, that's extremely sizable.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. A few more questions. Research and development. How big is research and development big a part of your business? Is it something that you have to do a lot of, research, or it's a relatively simple product? You got it all figured out. It's all about just manufacturing.
We analyzed a lot of our competitors. It's the principally research that we made. We know about what they are developing, and we go through this to develop our products.
So developing a product like what you showed us, does it require a lot of sort of high-tech technologies, or is it more or less just basically molding the plastic into the forms?
It's molding the plastic.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We don't have a lot of research for the products.
Okay. Now
we want to do this. We want to do more this, but it's a little bit difficult to do this in the reality, because we don't have a bigger let's say we don't have a big team to develop this kind of research here in Soprano.
A related question also is here. Are you planning to start making any other products, any other directions, or not at the moment? So you have locks, you have furniture hardware, you have thermal wear. So any other plans to add anything to your list?
We want to improve our business. So we want to develop another product in this year. For an example, we want to improve our new lines that we recently developed, and we want to como é que fosse não esqueci da palavra melhorar nossa linha de isotérmicos, and improve our isothermal products.
Okay, okay. Now,
sorry for our poor English, but
no, that's exactly what we want. I mean, we have every company this semester is from a different country, and differences in language and institutions and cultures. That's exactly what we want the students to experience. So no problem at all.
Nice.
Now, we have a lot of questions about your geography as far as where you would like to sell your products. So at this time, you said most of your operations or most of your sales happen in the neighboring countries, so Brazil and the countries around.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but one of the questions you are asking our students to research is, are there any new markets where the products could be profitable, could be popular? So do you have any preferences for specific markets, or would you be willing to sell anywhere as long as it brings profits? What is your, or are there any specific countries that you are most interested in? So what's your sort of take on it?
Our top one of selling, it's Brazil, but it doesn't matter if sell for other countries. It's no problem for us. In Brazil, an example, in Brazil, we sell a lot in the north part of Brazil, in the south. We don't have a structure in the central part of Brazil.
And Brazil is huge. I mean, that's like the third largest country in the world or something like that, or fourth, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
There is actually a question from Andressa Rocco. I think, I'm not sure how to pronounce it correctly. So she says, hi, I'm from Brazil as well. I would like to know in which region Soprano is mostly sold, and if they know the reason why this number is higher in that region. So you said that you're primarily selling your products in the north. Do you know why? Is it just because you are there, or?
It's because our representations in the north of Brazil, it's more strongest.
Okay, so yeah, and again, Brazil, that's a huge country. I mean, we are talking like your provinces are basically the size of countries in Europe, right? And the whole Brazil, it's probably the size of the European Union geographically, if you look like, you know, area-wise. Yeah, the population is not quite. What's the population of Brazil?
Brazil is like, about 200 million people.
Yeah. So that's basically the, you know, almost the whole or a good size of the continent. So it makes sense that, yeah. Okay. So then for the students, as you will be working on the challenge, one of the questions you need to answer is which new countries would be a good new market for Soprano, particularly, you know, with respect to, you know, high demand, little competition. And so the question to you would be, so what would be the attributes of the market that would make it suitable for your new sort of expansion plan? Does it have to be close because the shipping cost is high? Does it need to be, I don't know, certain cultural or economic, you know, conditions must be met? Like, what would be the characteristics of the country where the demand for your product will be high? I don't know if you have any tips. I mean, it seems to me, because it's a physical product, it seems to me some geographic proximity probably would matter, because it's a heavy product. You have to ship it, and I assume you know, if you start shipping it to countries far away, the cost of shipping will be high. But I don't know, like for example, the United States, would that be a good new market? I mean, it's relatively close.
Yes, it's a good market. We are trying to improve our products for another characteristic. For an example, we have the only thermal box in the market that it's stackable. You can put a product inside the another products.
Yeah, like the Russian matryoshka, right?
Yeah.
Russian doll where they put one inside the next one.
We have these products.
That's a big one.
Box 28 liters. And we can put the product inside another product. The box has this part that's inside the another box.
It just kind of stacks up. Yeah.
And we can lower the cost of shipment.
Like transportation and storage.
Yes.
Yeah.
So a box like that, that's what would you keep in it? So that would be like drinks, like when you go, like when you have a picnic, right? You can put all kinds of stuff just to keep it cold. Is that kind of what it is?
Yes. Yeah.
So,
perfect.
There is another question about manufacturing. I want to move into the business side, but there are still more questions about the product and production. So you said that you make the products yourself. Have you ever thought about outsourcing the production, or are you outsourcing any of the components, production of any of the components, or it's 100% made in-house?
We already have outsourcing in some components of products. Like in an example, we released in this year a line called Under the Sink. We call it here in Brazil Under the Sink. It's like a dispenser agora fugiu a palavra. Detergent.
Yeah, like soap, right?
Detergent, and we outsource this part of the product. It's from China, an example. We assemble here in Brazil, but we buy already parts from another parts of the world.
So this one, that would be like detergent dispenser, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So, okay. A few more questions that we missed. So somebody asked the name Soprano, where does it come from? It's a musical term. I guess you said that you used to make musical instruments, so that makes sense.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
it's from the musical part we are already made in the past.
Yeah, because when I first thought, locks and thermal boxes, I mean, how Soprano is related to that, but yeah, I guess if you started with the accordions, that
Yes.
makes sense.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Another question is about your retailing and distribution. So do you have your own stores? Do you work with the retailers, distributors? How does your sort of retail side works?
We have retailers and distributors. We don't have
Start.
our own stores.
Okay. And then a related question would be your promotion strategy. So how do you do marketing at this time? Is it a special, separate department? Is it a separate company that does marketing for you? And then more importantly, what tools do you use or what tricks do you use to advertise and promote your products?
We have here a marketing department in each unity, but we have
Partner.
a partner companies that made the part of the communications and other things relation with the marketing things strategy.
So how does the advertisement work for your product? Is it mainly like TV and radio, or do you do?
No.
No, not
We
that.
work-
Not TV.
No.
Why not? Because it seems like it's a general consumer product. I mean, it seems like TV.
It's a very cost.
Because
Yeah,
in Brazil
expensive.
it's very expensive the marketing in the TV.
So how do you advertise your
Example.
product?
For an example, 1 hour at TV Globo, it's the principal television show in Brazil. 1 hour in TV Globo, it's about 300
Price.
reais.
So how do you advertise then? Is it social media or
Social media, basically.
Social
Yeah.
That's interesting. So yeah, we had a few companies that have a product that is very specialized. And so for them, it doesn't make sense to use broadcasting like TV or radio for advertisement because it's a very narrow niche where the products would be sold, like some sort of IT services or maybe some special, professional solutions. Your products are more kind of general population product, right? So when you advertise, I guess you're trying to reach as many people as possible. So, but yeah, it makes sense. If TV is too expensive, it totally makes sense. There is a question. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
It's easier for us to use communication for Instagram, for example.
Yeah.
Instead of use a TV communication.
Right. Makes total sense.
More cheaper.
Yeah. Makes absolutely perfect sense. Just a second. So there are several questions here. So when it comes to marketing, then you said you do it internally. You don't hire an external company to do it for you.
Excuse me?
So for the marketing, so you do it all in house. So your own people do the advertisement, or you work with other companies like marketing agencies.
Other companies.
Oh, so you do outsource that?
Yes.
Okay. Another question about production that I skipped. So somebody asked, in your total production cost, what are the different categories? Like, for example, what percentage is the labor cost? What percentage what percentage is the production cost, transportation, logistics, marketing? Do you have those figures? Like, what is your cost structure, basically?
50% is production cost.
Mm-hmm. And so within the production cost, how much is the labor? Like, how much is the salaries or wages of the people versus the machinery and energy and whatever else?
Around 14%.
That's the labor. And then what are the
Yes.
other main expenses? Is it electricity or heating or-
Another cost we have, and is so expensive for us, is our logistic cost. Then this represents for us 15%.
Okay, that
A
makes
lot
sense.
of.
Yeah.
Yes, because the products are so big.
Yeah, and it's a heavy product. Yeah,
Yes.
makes perfect sense. Now, in terms of shipping and logistics, so how do you normally ship them? Is it by train, by trucks?
Trucks.
Yeah,
In
within
Brazil,
the country.
principal movement of products is from trucks.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay, so there are a few more questions that I would like to ask about the challenge itself, and so maybe you can clarify what you expect from the students. So I'm looking here, let me in fact open the document so that students can see it. So these are the questions that you ask students to work on. Let me just 1 second, let me share the screen here. So when we look at the challenge here, so one question is, do the competition analysis. And you already provide some examples of the companies that are competitors, but then the students would need to do a little bit more analysis. So this one's pretty straightforward. Identify new promising markets. We talked about that. So it sounds like you're willing to sell anywhere where the demand is and the opportunity is. Although it seems to me the students will have to do some research how expensive it is to ship the product there. Are there any import tariffs? Are there any trade agreements in place? And then market analysis, so the students would be asked to analyze the market, consumer preferences, maybe some regulations in the market. One thing I would like to say to the students here is that when you will be describing the market, try to focus on things that are relevant to this specific company. So what we see sometimes in the reports that the students prepare is that they describe the country in general terms, like, the languages, the religion, the political system, the economic system. It's all interesting, but it's not always relevant to the company per se. So when you students will be describing the market that you think is promising for Soprano, make sure to talk about the things that are relevant to this company in particular. So maybe some special trade regulations, maybe some competition analysis, maybe something related to the customer tastes. Like, for example, in the United States, I know that thermalware would probably be a popular product because Americans like a lot of, picnics and parties. And so you always use those products, to keep the products chilled. So I'm not sure if that's the same, culture or the same approach in different countries. So those would be the things that you might want to, explore more. There is a question about the market entry mode, and let's talk a little bit more about that. So when you will be going to different markets, do you have a preference in terms of how you will be present in that market? Like, are you open to the idea of creating a whole subsidiary, maybe opening your own production facilities, maybe opening your own distribution centers? Or would you be more interested in just selling the product to the local distributor and let them do all the job? Like you mentioned, you have an office in China. What exactly do they do there? Is it more work with the suppliers, or do they do some distribution for you? Can you talk more about it?
In China, we work with the suppliers. We have a person there that contacts with the supplier to negotiate the products, the prices, and the.
And another strategy, Soprano, with China, you use China like a laboratory. Then we import some products, we put in our
market,
and we test. Okay, if the result is okay, we start to develop these products in China and production here in Brazil. Then for us, it's a good strategy to know more than the market.
Yeah. There is actually a related question here from Warren Johnson. And this one is, just a second, there was one about labor cost. We talked about that. Neighboring countries, there was a question about suppliers. So where do your components come from? So you said that some of the parts you buy from China, but when it comes to the raw materials, is that local, or do you source it from somewhere else?
Local.
And Brazil, so what exactly is used to make that plastic? Is it oil, or like
plastic?
What is the actual raw material?
No, we buy the plastic from Braskem. Here, it's a big company here in Brazil that has representatives in another countries from the world. But our principal supplier is Braskem.
And so what you buy from them are those little plastic granules?
Yes.
Like, yeah. Okay. So that's how you get your stuff, and then you just smelt it. And, okay, that makes sense. Okay, let me go back to the challenge. And so there are a few more questions that we wanted to ask to make sure. So market entry mode, then would you be open to the possibility of opening offices in other countries that would handle the distribution there? Or would you prefer selling the product directly to the customer or local distributors without any presence in the market per se?
We have another office in Mexico. Then in Soprano in Mexico, we work with a Brazilian guy, and they are responsible to buy from Brazil and to buy to China and have the distribution. In another countries, we prefer to work with distributor. Then we export for them, and they have a structure and a strategy for that market. Because like in USA, the different markets are different strategy, different culture, different ways to distribution.
And that makes perfect sense. Yeah, for you to learn how it works in that country, it will be probably too expensive and too time consuming. So it's probably cheaper to find a local distributor that will do all the job for you, right? A related question, so did you try selling your products in different countries outside your immediate region, like maybe using Amazon or some other online retailers, or that's something you haven't tried yet?
A gente usa o e-commerce principalmente, né?
We have this structure to sell by marketplace, but now represents around 2% of our sales.
Okay, there is actually a very interesting question from Stanislav here. So what is your typical consumer or customer? Do you have sort of like a profile of your typical buyer, or it's very different? Like, for example, he says, are those just general, like people who buy it for camping or for mountain hikes, or it's more like for just storing food at home? I assume those thermal bottles, that's probably what people can take lunch with to work, right? To keep it warm or to keep it cold. So
yes, depends the products. A bottle is more common women to buy these products. Ice box is more common a man. Depends on the products.
Yeah, I have one of those bigger boxes that we use when we have like a little gathering at my house. That's where we put the drinks, like beer or soft drinks.
Yes.
Just put a couple of, like pour some ice in it, and then just to keep it cold, people just come and take one whenever they are ready.
We don't know the culture in the USA. For an example, we saw in the movies people in the parties using the thermal box to put drinks, like you said.
Yeah.
But it's only in parties and big events, in family, and like that. In Brazil, we use thermal box principally in the beach.
Right. Yeah, I guess it makes sense.
The person goes to the beach at the weekend and take their thermal box with a lot of beer and drink a lot of beer in the day in the beach. It's like, for an example.
And it works both for cold and hot, right? I guess the thermal box, that's mainly for keeping it cold. And then the bottle's probably mainly for keeping it hot. But it can be the other, either way, right?
Yeah, you can use in the both ways. For example, we use a lot for beer in Brazil, but we already has a client that asked for us to use hot food inside to sell in the streets.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, so then there is a block of questions for the students about marketing. And so one of the question asks to think about the pricing strategy. So how, let's say the students recommend, I don't know, the United States or Canada as a new market. So one of the questions is, so how much should it cost in that country? Are there any other pricing strategy considerations that need to be taken into account? But then the students are also asked to think about the promotion channels. And so I thought it was very useful. You said that, right, TV or maybe magazines or maybe radio can be too expensive. So for the students, again, my tip is think about the best way to advertise the product in a kind of cost-effective way. even though Soprano is a big company, but nobody wants to spend too much money on marketing unnecessarily. And so it's always a good idea to think about a way that allows you to advertise cheaply and exactly to the potential buyers. Like going back to Stanislav's question, so like who are the consumers? And so he mentioned, like hikers, campers, and things like that. So maybe if some of those products are specifically designed for, like adventures in the wilderness, maybe the advertisement can be done through like social media groups where those people communicate with one another. Or maybe some sort of product placement, through the influencers, I don't know, like some famous travelers. So it seems to me like that may be a little bit cheaper and more targeted for that specific product. So my tip or advice for the students is to think about, which form of advertisement will give you the best return on investment. I mean, obviously with TV, you can cover a large audience, but it will cost so much that, is it worth it at all? And so what would be the message that you want to design? And then promotional materials, again, one of the questions asks the students to maybe design some sort of a, example of what the ad might look like, or what the maybe promo video script might look like. So show us what you know here. And then there are a couple of questions related to logistics and trade regulations. So the company is asking, let's say you recommend a new market, I don't know, the United States or Canada. What would be the best way to ship the product to that country? And also, are there any trade regulations like import tariffs or maybe some sort of certification requirements? So you would have to do your research and bring that information to the company, because again, it may look like it's a great market, but if the shipping cost is too high, or there is a high import tariff in place, that can change the whole, story here. And so, and talking about trade regulations and logistics, so you said that transportation cost is a big component of the price. Is that the case?
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I assume again, the product is big and heavy, and
Yes.
I guess like shipping it by air would not be an option, right? That would be like way too expensive. So it would have to be something like containers by truck or by train or something like that.
For an example, in the past we had a design for the box like that format, and we changed the format for the other one that we showed to you, and we reduced the transportation about 14%.
Yeah,
Only
exactly.
changing the design of the product.
Yeah, and that's a huge deal. I mean, that's essentially your savings, right? So that's a big deal. There is a question here again, in terms of tourism to Brazil. Does tourism in any way affect your business? The question reads, does your company benefit from the increasing number of tourists in Brazil? So I'm not sure if it's...
Today we believe not. That not interferes.
How about this whole scare with the coronavirus? People buying more. Well, I guess, your product's allowed to preserve food. So I don't know. Is it having any impact on your business? Brazil is not affected. Do you have any cases of the coronavirus?
We have about
You do?
225 confirmed cases, but we have about 200 people that it's not confirmed cases of coronavirus.
Corona are arriving in Brazil now, starting now. We don't know for 2 months the impact for this.
Yeah, here in the United States, it's
our region is so bad, and
because it's in the south.
Yes.
The weather it's more cold, and it's complicated for us here in the next months.
Yes.
Because the weather is so more cold.
Well, for you, that's still summer, basically, right? So it's still hot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're the other side of the planet. Yeah. And then also another question is related to the kind of geopolitical situation. So does that affect your transportation and loss of profits? And I think the question is more about all those Brexits and the wall between the United States and Mexico. I think Brazil is a little affected, is a little bit less. But again, all these geopolitical developments, you know, the European Union is falling apart, the trade wars between China and the United States, the tension because of the wall between Mexico and the United States. Is that affecting you in any way?
No, it's for the countries in Latin America. It's we don't have a lot of problems. Like for an example, we have a straight commercial with Argentina, Paraguay, Bolivia, Chile. All these countries we are free to make business. It's very. It's no problem.
I assume when it comes to Venezuela, so that crisis does not affect you much, or does it? Venezuela is a little further away. I know Colombia gets a lot of refugees from Venezuela.
Yeah.
Brazil, are you still getting some there?
No.
Você está recebendo os refugiados.
Not really, no.
We don't have
I hear we have several companies from Colombia, and so they shared that it's an issue. So you have a lot of people crossing into the country, and then it creates all kinds of humanitarian issues. But Brazil is a little further away, so I guess.
Brazil receives a lot of immigrants from these countries, but we don't have problems with marketing business with other countries here in Latin America.
Okay, we are almost out of time, but we still have a few questions from students. One of them is competition and protection of your basically intellectual property. So how do you protect yourself against plagiarism and intellectual theft? And is that a problem at all? So does anyone tries to copy your products?
They try to copy our products all the time, but
really?
Inside and outside Brazil.
But we have it's not a company, it's how can I say, organ in Brazil that is called ENPI.
Like the governmental agency?
Yeah, governmental agency, that we can register our products from the design, the idea of the product, we can register on ENPI. It's
like a patent type of deal?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Another question, and that's a very good one from Warren Johnson. What is your nearest ports? So basically, if you need to ship your products internationally, do you have access to the waterways, to the ocean?
Rio Grande or São Paulo, Santos?
So the geography, how does it go? Like there is a river going to the ocean, and from there you can ship it worldwide, or how?
No, it's only in the ocean. They arrived, the containers arrive in São Paulo and the Rio Grande, it's in the middle of Brazil and the south of Brazil. We have these two arriving ports.
So if we look at the map, I'm trying to share my screen here. Let's see, just curious where exactly you are and how does it work. So if we go to Brazil, what cities? You said you're primarily in the north, right? I'm trying to open the map here. So if we look at the map here, so you're somewhere like northern part?
We are in the south. In the south.
Oh, you're in the south.
Yeah. We are here in the Rio Grande do Sul. State de Rio Grande do Sul.
Oh, so all the way in the south.
Here.
Okay.
And we have a port here next to Porto Alegre.
Yeah, I see it.
And the another one is nearest from São Paulo.
Okay, got it. And so then basically once the product is in Porto Alegre, it can be shipped anywhere globally, essentially.
And they come from the other parts of the country from trucks.
Yeah. Brazil is huge. I'm looking at Brazil. Yes, it's actually basically bigger than the European Union, right? Like area-wise. I knew it's big, but I didn't realize it's that big. Like if you look at it, it's basically, like the entire EU can fit in Brazil. Huh, interesting. Yeah.
We invite you to know Brazil and Soprano.
We should come there. I've been to Brazil only a couple of times for conferences in Rio de Janeiro, only mainly in that area. But yeah, I mean, it's a huge country, and I imagine it's very different, from depending on the region. So
yes, it's totally different.
And you do have a common border with Venezuela. I didn't realize that you actually you do have.
Yeah.
So yeah, right. Okay. Okay, well, very interesting. So I think we're pretty much done. So there are a couple more questions. So we talked about the ports. There is one more question. Research and development are very costly and the competition is not sleeping. How do you, oh, we talked about that, the protection against the competition. So yeah, I think we pretty much covered all the questions. There are a few more questions from students from Brazil. So what would it take to get a job at your company? Like when you hire people, what are you looking for? What kind of characteristics would allow them to improve their chances of getting a job at your company? Any thoughts, any suggestions?
Tipo, quais são as características que a Soprano
Are you
procura?
looking for a specific like degree in education? Are you looking for something else?
Yes, we look for, depends of the job. Then we have for many people working in our manufacturers. Then when we look for this kind of the person, is more a person with knowledge in injection process, more technical.
Mm-hmm.
And when we look for the salesperson, we look for person with graduation, administration, the engineer, marketing, and we have good opportunities for the people start the first job in Soprano. Then we are working and to develop these persons inside Soprano. And so important for the persons when Soprano looks to start working here is the person, the performance of the person,
Os valores.
the values, many attributes we need is important to work in Soprano because we, in our opinion, is important Soprano and the person works together.
Yeah. Well, all I can say, guys, you students, you have an opportunity to write a good report and impress the company with the knowledge and the ideas that you have. And who knows, maybe they will read your report and will say, oh, who wrote this one? We want to hire that person. And it did happen in the past. We've had cases when the students did such a good job that I would get a call from the company and they said, can I get the names of the people who wrote this? It's so good. We really want to hire them if they happen to be in my country. So I don't know, try.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what's going to happen now is the students have just started. So we just formed teams a couple of days ago. So they will be selecting the client companies later this week. And I hope that Soprano will be popular and many students will choose your company. And then it will be sort of quiet for a couple of months because they will be working on the reports. There will be questions from time to time. And when they have questions, we will forward them to you. If it's a question that we know the answer to, we will just copy and paste the answer from our catalog of questions. But if it's a new question and we don't know the answer, we will contact you and ask for more information. And then I think there will be more questions towards the end as they're finishing up the reports, but we'll see how things go. And then if everything goes well, we should have the reports ready for you sometime in basically first days of May. And yeah, we'll see. Hopefully there will be a lot of good ideas there. So. With the students, again, one of the things in the challenge instructions is that the company encourages you to not only come up with ideas, but also try to maybe talk to the local distributors, retailers, and see if they would be interested in maybe distributing the product. So for example, if there is a big, I don't know, chain of stores that sells this kind of product, maybe try to schedule an appointment with whoever, deals with the procurement there. So maybe they would be willing to get a container of those products from Soprano and try and sell them. And if it works, it can be, a viable business line. So in addition to thinking and giving your ideas, maybe try to do your own market research and try to talk to potential buyers or distributors. Always a good idea, gives you a good, understanding of what works, what doesn't. And yep, we are very curious to see your answers and suggestions.
It'd be awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much. So we will be in touch by email and let's see what the students come up with. And hopefully they will come up with lots of good ideas for you.
Okay.
Thanks so
much.
much.
Mm-hmm.
Nice to meet you.
So much. Mm-hmm. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Mm-hmm.